Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into a really challenging essay by an author named Lev Neymotin, and he puts forward a powerful idea. What if the Holocaust wasn't just a historical crime? What if we should actually see it as a profound moral test that was given to entire nations?
All right, so let's get right into it. The way Neymotin starts his analysis is really interesting. He doesn't begin with, big armies or a bunch of statistics. Instead, he tells this simple but incredibly stark story about human choice. And really, this one story sets the stage for his entire argument.
I mean, just think about that for a second. You've got the same small town, the same exact lethal threat hanging over everyone's heads. Two farmers face the very same moral test. And their choices? One went with heroic sacrifice, while the other chose a fatal betrayal. The outcomes, as you can see, couldn't be more tragically different.
And for Neymotin, this contrast, well, it's everything. This is the whole point. He's arguing that the Holocaust wasn't some abstract event carried out by a handful of monsters in Berlin. No, he says it was the sum total of millions and millions of individual choices, just like these, made by ordinary people all across an entire continent.
So this really brings us to his core premise. Neymotin is basically saying we have to shift our perspective. We need to move beyond seeing the Holocaust only as a crime against the Jewish people and start seeing it as something else, a moral stress test, a test that was given to entire societies, one that revealed their true character when all the rules of civility just completely fell apart.
Okay, but how can you actually analyze something so massive? How do you compare the responses of entire societies? Well, to do this, Neymotin introduces a framework, a way of breaking it all down that he calls the moral anatomy of genocide.
Basically, he argues that during this time, people and even whole nations fell into one of 5 distinct moral roles. It's a spectrum, really. It goes all the way from the architects who planned the whole thing, down to the few who risked absolutely everything to stop it.
Now pay attention to how Neymotin spreads out the responsibility here. He's saying it wasn't just the German planners at the top. He also points to willing partners, other countries that acted on their own. And then you had the local collaborators who made the killing brutally efficient. But the group he really focuses on is the largest one, the bystanders.
And for Neymotin, the bystanders are the most critical group. Here's his chilling argument. Genocide doesn't actually need everyone to hate. It just needs most people to not care. That silence from the majority, he says it wasn't passive at all. It was the very fuel that kept the whole machinery of death running.
Okay, so this whole framework, it's all building up to what is easily the most controversial part of his entire essay. Neymotin does something that many historians just will not do. He directly compares the morality of different nations.
And yeah, it's a deeply uncomfortable question, right? Is it even ethical to grade countries like this? But Neymotin just confronts it head on. He basically says that avoiding these comparisons isn't being sensitive, it's a kind of historical blindness. It's what stops us from learning the lessons we desperately need to learn.
So he comes up with a rubric. And it's not based on, ideology or what people said their intentions were. Nope. It's based purely on observable behavior. He asks 2 pretty simple questions. 1, how savage was the violence? And 2, how eagerly did a society join in, even when they weren't being forced to by the Germans?
And this table is the result. It's what Neymotin calls his moral synthesis. And you can see it right away. He puts Germany and Romania at the absolute darkest end of the spectrum, maxing out on both cruelty and willingness. But then look at the other end. He holds up Denmark as the prime example of a society that showed incredible moral resistance, really on a national scale.
Now, Neymotin is really clear about how we should not read this table. He's not trying to say every single person in a country was cruel, and he's definitely not trying to assign guilt to future generations. The point here is to use it as a tool, a way to spot patterns of collective behavior, to see how the true character of a society gets revealed when it's put under the most extreme pressure imaginable.
But the killing, that was only part of it. Neymotin points to something deeper, something even more insidious, a form of Nazi cruelty that was designed to destroy a person's soul, even if their body somehow managed to survive.
The term he uses for this is moral contamination, and the idea is that the Nazi system was deliberately engineered to do more than just kill Jews. It was designed to force them into these impossible, horrifying moral choices, to make them complicit, to break them from the inside out.
I mean, this quote from Jacob Gens, a Jewish leader in the Vilna Ghetto, it just perfectly captures it. He was forced by the Nazis to choose which of his own people would be sent to their deaths. He was caught in this horrific logic that by sacrificing some, he might save others. That right there, That was the engineered trap of moral contamination.
And Neymotin is absolutely adamant on this point. This was not a failure on the part of the victims. He says this was Nazi cruelty at its most refined, its most diabolical. A strategy specifically designed to make the victims complicit in their own destruction, to make sure that even if you survived, you carried an unbearable moral weight for the rest of your life.
All right, so this brings us to the end of his argument, where he connects all of this history directly to our world today. For Neymotin, this is not just about remembering the past. For him, history is supposed to be an urgent warning system for the present.
This is what he means by applied history. The whole point isn't just to mourn what happened. It's about learning to recognize the patterns when they show up again. And he believes those same moral roles he identified, the planners, the collaborators, and especially the bystanders, are absolutely reappearing in the world right now.
And he doesn't just speak in generalities. Neymotin points to one modern state specifically, Iran, which he argues has institutionalized and is actively exporting the same kind of violent anti-Semitic ideology that fueled the Holocaust. In fact, he uses incredibly strong language, calling it the key actor and the evil incarnation of Nazi Germany for our time.
And this really gets to why he thinks this analysis is so urgent. He looks at how the world responds to state-sponsored anti-Semitism today. The official statements, the memorials, the outrage, and he calls them empty rituals. To him, this is just the modern version of the mass indifference that allowed the Holocaust to happen. It's all performance, he says, not prevention.
In his conclusion, Neymotin makes what is maybe his most provocative claim of all. He totally rejects the idea that we can just place all the blame on a few bad leaders. He says that's just the way of letting entire societies off the hook.
See, his point is that leaders don't just appear out of nowhere. They emerge from the societies that choose them, or support them, or at the very least, tolerate them. The moral character of a nation, its habits, its values, that's what ultimately drives its actions. And as he says, history doesn't just repeat itself automatically. It's repeated by people, by the choices we make.
And so, this is where Lev Neymotin leaves us, with a final, really challenging question. By taking this history and turning it into a direct warning for our time, he's forcing us to look in the mirror. He makes us ask not just what happened back then, but what are we, you and I, choosing to do or not do right now?